Hey guys, in this video we're going to be checking out another micro drone, and this one is a sort of another evolution in the progression of these micro drones, and it seems like they're evolving daily as it seems like 2 or 3 of these are coming out every week, and with each iteration a new model, there's improvements and things I like about every model that comes out, and this one caught my eye for a lot of reasons. Let me just show you what it comes with first. This is they're calling it a bind and fly on the website. This is from FPV Model, by the way. However, it doesn't come with a receiver, so should it be technically called a plug and play? I don't know, it's just terminology, maybe it's mixed up. It comes in this really super nice case. It's got like, I don't know, it's like vinyl or something, but it's got a little pouch here. You can stick your micro drone inside here and carry it around with you. Of course, you got to do it with the props off, so it goes in like that. You take the props off. So I'm not sure how practical this is in terms of like transporting your micro drone. Just that, you know, it's just that you got to take the props off every time, and I don't really like doing that. So it's a nice thing. It would be nicer if they would have made it a little bit bigger and maybe like some foam inserts and something like that for travel, but it came like this and it was pretty nice. I like that, but I could use this little case for something else, for like storing extra props, tools, whatever. So it's not a total waste. I actually like that. It's pretty nice. Comes with 4 sets of the Gemfan 2035 props. I like these props a lot. They're very well balanced and smooth and good power. So we'll take a look at the drone itself, and it's supposed to be 90 millimeters motor to motor, and looks like, yeah, pretty much comes in right at about 90 millimeters. So it's a pretty small size for what you get. So unlike the AR Fun 90, this one can swing the full 2-inch prop, so they've designed this frame much better than the AR Fun 90. On top of that, they're now including a micro swift in here. This is a much better camera than the all-in-ones. With a CMOS sensor, very low resolution, very poor light handling. I love this camera, and I'm really glad that a lot of the micro drones are coming out now, especially in the 2-inch class and 2.5-inch class. They're going to be coming out with the micro swift, and the new frames are coming out are being designed for the micro swift in mind, and I think that's the right direction, and I like that. And I think that pretty much anything that's coming out in the future should have this in mind, and not the old all-in-ones, because now that the micro swift is out, we don't need those anymore. Because this is not an all-in-one, the video transmitter is now on top here. It's a Dragonfly 25 milliwatt 48 channel, and there's a little button inside here. There's a little notch here, so you do need some sort of a plastic tool to get in there and switch your bands and channels. Alright, so the motors we got on here are Dragonfly branded. I think that's the FPV Model in-house brand. Very nice, smooth. All the motors have really smooth bearings. You can't hear it, but as I was spinning them, a lot of these 1104 size type motors are sometimes come with rough bearings right out of the box. These are actually 1105 motors, and they're 7500 kV. They will produce about 108 grams of thrust on a 2S battery at full throttle on those Gemfan 2035s. It can spin bigger props, and it has different current draws. If you go to the product spec page, they have a little chart there which shows all the different props that they tested. But the ones that they came with, the max thrust is going to be about 108 grams. And I think it was about 11.8 amps at full throttle. So, which is fine for 2S, because this all-in-one power cube stacker 4-in-1 ESC plus flight controller. This is the Flycolor Raptor S Mini. This comes with a 12 amp 4-in-1 ESC plus flight controller, and I think that if you want to go 4S in here, I'm not sure if it's going to be okay or not. The amp draw might be a little bit too high. It does burst to 15 amps, so it might be okay for very short periods of time, and depending on how heavy this thing is. It does come with the right connector, of course. It's got the XT30, so I'm not worried about brownouts from a weak battery, unless you get a really crappy battery, of course, then you can still get the brownouts. So the flight controller on here is not an omnibus FPV like a lot of these power cubes. It's an SB Racing F3 board. So I think it's got the 6050 gyro, not the 6000 gyro, so something to keep in mind. So it might present some issues with tuning. We'll have to see. This particular version does come with an OSD, but it's not the Betaflight OSD. It is MW OSD, and it's got version 1.6 on there. And I was able to mod it, the settings. If you get the MW GUI, you can go in there and mod the settings. However, there's in the upper left-hand corner, and you'll see in the FPV video, in the flight video, that says fly color in the upper left. That was not removable in the GUI, so I think if you want to remove it, you have to basically reflash the chip. I didn't want to do that, and I just changed the settings. By the way, if you want to change the settings in here, what you got to do is you have to power the board through the LiPo, not the USB. You go into Betaflight configurator, and then you go and you have to issue the serial pass-through command, and the OSD is on UART2, so MSP has to be enabled on UART2, and then you issue the serial pass-through command, and then on that COM port you should be able to connect through via the MW GUI. If you guys don't understand all that, let me know, and I could do a tutorial video on that, although there's a lot of those videos already out there. So if you just search for MW GUI and Betaflight serial pass-through, you'll find lots of hits. But let me know if you guys have trouble, and I'll try and help you guys out. But it's fairly easy to do. You can just still connect to the OSD through the standard USB port using the Betaflight pass-through feature. So as I mentioned before, it does come with 4 sets of props, and they do include the screws for the props. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to put the props on, and we'll go ahead and weigh this and see how much this weighs without the battery. Okay, forgot that before we can put the props on, we got to put a receiver in here. So I'm using the, this is the FlySky RX2A Pro receiver, and the smallest one. Is not a whole lot of room here. Just going to stick it on top of the flight controller with some double-sided foam tape and stick the antenna out the little hole here in front of the video transmitter. I'm using UART3, and the receive pin in UART3 is this yellow cable that goes right there, and then you get 5 volts there and ground. Those are labeled. On the board it's silk screened as RX for UART3. So just take a look at this way I wired this, and this is the way you should wire either your FlySky iBus receiver or your FreeSky S-Bus receiver. So it should work both ways for this. And probably if you're using FreeSky, I'd use like the FreeSky XM Plus receiver. That's probably the smallest one, and then you can just stick it in here on top of the flight controller. Also, this is a good time for you guys to connect your OSD cable to your MicroSwift and make any changes you want to the camera at this point as well. Okay, so I got the props on and I got the receiver in. You can see I have the antenna sticking out right there, and it's just right there on top of the flight controller and right below the video transmitter. Hopefully that won't present any RF issues. We'll see. There's not really anywhere else to put that receiver. The prop clearance on this is super tight. You can see here just about no space there, and just barely clearing the flight controller there. It's a little bit worse than the back here. You can see pretty much next to nothing. So in fact, I think it's rubbing just a little bit there. And I think that because these are 3D printed parts, the tolerances are off a little bit, so there's more clearance on this side, on this side of the quad. So you can see there's a little bit more space there, and not as much, or actually a lot more in the front here on this side versus over here. You can clearly see the difference in clearance. It's about 1 millimeter on the right and 0 on the left. And it's because this 3D printed part is kind of flexible. You can kind of twist it. I may have to hit it with a heat gun and straighten this out, because it is a little bit, looks like it's a little bit warped. I think it's sort of the problem with these 3D printed parts is that things will bend, and we'll have to also see how they hold up in a crash, because you got a metal screw here going into a plastic piece here, and you know that eventually this will strip out. I'm kind of wondering if replacement parts are available. I'm not sure. That'd be nice if there were. Also, by the way, they're available in different colors. This is the red one, obviously. There's white, green, and blue as well. But yeah, the tolerances are super tight, so we're going to have to see how this thing flies. Hopefully we won't get too many prop strikes. I mean, it shouldn't bend too much. The arms are short, but they are only 2 millimeters thick. It's not a 3 millimeter arm. Although the carbon here is super nice. You can see the nice cuts there. They got the beveled edges all around, so you're not going to be cutting yourself on there. Top plate's also 2 millimeters, although it's not really necessary. But yeah, it looks really nice and really sharp. So I'm going to put some rubber bands here on the bottom and a little bit of foam for the battery pad. And actually, let's go ahead and get a weight measurement now. Okay, is everything without the battery? It's coming in at about 70 grams, so that's about what I expected for this, for a 2-inch micro with the 1105 motors. 2S battery, I'm thinking maybe like put a 450 on here, and that'll probably be a good 4 to 4.5 minute flight time, I'm thinking. Yeah, but at this point I'm going to go ahead and do all the flashing on the computer. It comes with Betaflight 3.1.5. I would recommend just sticking with that and not doing all the flashing and stuff. I don't think there's that much benefit going to 3.1.7. That's what I'm going to be doing, and I'll show you the before and after of what I'm going to do. But for you guys, I just recommend sticking with what's on here, because they have a bunch of resource mapping stuff, and you have to basically re-import the CLI dump and all that kind of jazz, and it's probably too much work for very little benefit, but I'll be doing that for myself. Okay, I'm just going to run up these motors and just give you a taste of how smooth these are. Pretty smooth for 1100X series motors. Okay, so this is the default configuration in Betaflight for this model, and if you guys want to revert back to original factory settings, I refer you to this part of the video. I'm going to be obviously changing everything to suit my my tastes and my flying style and my PIDs and all that kind of stuff, so just be aware of that the way I configure my setup is completely different from what comes from the factory. So it comes with Betaflight 3.1.5, and the board on here is an SP Racing F3. It's got serial RX on UART3. D-Shot's 300 out of the box, not 600. Serial based receiver S-Bus. It's running a 4 and 2 kilohertz gyro and PID loop with accelerometer on. It's got an LED strip. No air mode. No OSD. These are default settings for failsafe and for the PID tune. It looks like default for 3.1.5. Nothing special going on here in receiver. No mode setup, so if you want to set up your modes for switch arming and air mode, angle, horizon, all that, you should do that here. And so that's pretty much it for the factory setup. I'm going to go in here and I will do a CLI dump, and I'll put a link to the original factory CLI dump in the description if you want it. Okay, so I flashed the board to the latest Betaflight 3.1.7, and this is my setup. Serial RX on UART3. I'm going to try D-Shot 600 and see how that goes. I'm using an iBus FlySky receiver, so be aware of that. You need to change your setup for that. And since this is an SP Racing F3 board, I'm just doing the 4 kHz, 2 kHz gyro and PID loop. I got one LED strip there on the back, and I'm doing air mode. These are my normal failsafe settings. This is the PIDs I'm going to start with. And this is my receiver tab. Here are the modes I'm setting up for this particular model. And then these are my normal in-flight adjustments that I use on my transmitter to do PID tuning in the air. So that's pretty much it for my settings, and I'll put a CLI dump in the description for the modified settings for the 3.1.7 Betaflight. So just FYI, I'm doing this line of sight flying on a 2S LiPo. I did figure out eventually to get the PIDs working on 3S. It took a little while because the PIDs have to be much lower than you would expect, and you'll see that in the CLI dump for 3S, but it flies incredibly well on 3S, and in fact I probably recommend 3S over 2S if you're flying FPV. It's pretty nice on 2S for FPV. It's just that once you go to 3S, it's kind of hard to go back, and you'll see the difference when you see the FPV footage. Okay, so here it is flying on 2S, and it's a fun flyer on 2S, but it is, I think in my estimation, a little on the slow side. I think I'm kind of getting used to flying 3S on these micros now, and once you go to 3S, it's kind of hard to go back, but it still flies very nice on 2S. I think that for most intermediate pilots, this will be plenty fast, and it's very stable, and it's a pretty good park flyer, but as you can tell, things are kind of slow, or I guess they'll be slower compared to the 3S video that I'll be showing you momentarily. Okay, so here it is on 3S, and I'm running a 450 Tattoo battery, 3S battery, 75C, and it's pretty good power, very fast, very acrobatic, tons and tons of power. I got kind of caught up in doing dives and power loops, so if you get a little bored of that, sorry about it. But yeah, it's just got tons and tons of power. I was really impressed with how much power that these motors and ESCs were producing, and with really minimal effort. I was not even going full throttle on a lot of these punch outs. It was pretty amazing. Overall, I'm so impressed with this model that I would have to say that this now is my favorite 2-inch micro. Now the Lizard has been replaced by this one, and it's just because I think this performs a lot better, and I really like the micro Swift on here. It just makes flying so much easier. You just can see so much more detail, and I really like that the fact that this thing flies really well. I can pretty much do whatever I want with it. So overall, very impressed with this, and I highly recommend it.